Alien Ray writes, I've hunted, gathered, and accumulated so many wonderful memory-keeping products through the years that my scrap room resembles a small store. While it would seem like an enviable spot to be in, I've apparently moved from a one-time productive cropper into merely an overzealous shopper, meaning that the sheer volume of products I own actually hinders my creativity. Every time I start to pre-plan and pull a page kit together, I become practically paralyzed because I'm concerned that I've not chosen the best items. How can I conquer this fear and be productive once again, as I was when I had fewer supplies? Glittergirl, can you help Alien Ray pass by what paralyzes her productivity?
Of course I can. Now, I think today's question is definitely going to be a sort of work in progress, but today I'd like to give you some really concrete steps to make 3 layouts and get past this little creative block, as it were. So this is an exercise that I suggest trying whenever you're really stuck and you're looking at all your supplies and having that feeling that there is so much that you just don't know where to start. So here's what I'm going to suggest, and I don't think that you have to scrapbook like this every day, but I do think it's a way that you can get past that sort of I have so many things, what can I do now type block. So this will be a challenge for me as well, and I'm going to take you through the steps as I go. So the first thing is to pick your supplies, and I know in the original question you've already tried a few different things, so what I'm going to say is to make this really, really specific. I want you to start by choosing 3 background papers that you like, and don't even worry about the photos yet. So I've chosen 3 papers: this black and white diagonal stripe by Crate Paper, this ledger print in an aqua by Heidi Swap, and this yellow floral from the new Jenny Bolin Modern Mercantile collection. So those are going to be the 3 pages that are going to stay as 12 by 12. When I picked these, I didn't have the photos chosen. I just decided I would work with all 3 of these. Now I've chosen patterns that are not overwhelming. They're all either simple, like this is quite bold, but it's a simple design, so there's not a lot for your eye to take in. Or this floral is a more intricate design, but it's repeated and it's on a small format, so again, your eye can accept it. And a ledger is a really, really neutral pattern that's useful for all sorts of things. They all also just have basically one color plus white or cream, so black and white, turquoise or aqua, and white or cream, and yellow and cream. So that gives me a lot more variety in what I can make match those papers and the color schemes that I can come up with. So I'm starting with 3 12 by 12 sheets. I know those are going to be my backgrounds. Then I'm going to select some more pattern paper that I'm going to use across the 3 pages. And these are the only papers that I'm going to be using. I'm going to try my best not to step out and go back and look at other pattern papers. So I want to make sure I have some things that are multicolored. So I chose this multicolored stripe from the Serendipity collection by Heidi Swap. This slightly older pattern, this is a Crate Paper from the Paper Heart collection, which is turquoise with a little pink heart. I just wanted something that had more color than just the turquoise. I wanted turquoise with something, and I wanted it to be a really small pattern so that I could cut it into small strips and it would still be something that you could tell what it is. And then this pink paisley, which is a kind of just off black. It's not a harsh, really dark black. It's more like a very, very deep gray and cream print. It has this bolder pattern on the other side, and it's from their new Cottage Farms collection, but I really love this more neutral sheet. Then this is not a requirement. They can be any size, but I also have been trying to use my 6x6 papers more. So I pulled out a variety of 6x6 patterns. So I have some red from Simple Stories, some yellow from Lawn Fawn, some pink, and some black and cream from Basic Gray. So that's all the paper I'm going to use, and this still gives me a lot of freedom with my color schemes because I can go to the red and put the pink and the turquoise aside and have this sort of classic black, white, and red combination, which I could also add in yellow and bring in that other black and white pattern, and I have lots of variety going on there together. But I could take out the red and put in something pink for a very different combination. I can then mix in the turquoise. I can do kind of a turquoise, yellow, and gray combination. I can do lots of different shades with the yellow. So I have a lot of variety here, even though I'm really going to limit myself to just these papers. So that's the paper. I still haven't chosen photos at this point. I'm going to go ahead and assemble all of the supplies that I'm going to use because my next few steps are to pick some things that are really neutral. So I'm going to choose 3 alphabets, a small letter sticker and a large letter sticker. And now I went with gray because I knew that I could make that match everything in my kit. But there are other neutral colors you could use as well. So you could do a white or a cream alphabet. You could do a black, a brown. Sometimes if you have one color that you know is going to go all the way through, go ahead and choose that bold color and make it a hot pink, a turquoise, a bright yellow. You can also use silvers and golds as neutrals depending on the colors you've chosen. So I've chosen a small and a large alphabet that are a neutral color that will go with everything I've chosen so far. And then having a set of letter stamps also means that I can use any color because I can make them bold with my choice of ink. So I'm going to put those letter stamps in my set as well. I don't need to use them on every page, but if I decide that as I'm creating I really want something that has a different color lettering that's not gray, I have my stamps to cover all those bases. Then I get into embellishment. I want to divide my embellishment between things that are flat and things that are not. But I want to look at things that have some versatility in them. So I've basically gone through and chosen some things that I haven't cut into yet so that I make sure I don't let these just go to waste in my stash. This is from Acorn Avenue, the tape stickers, lots of different colors there, and there includes some yellow, a deeper turquoise, and some pink. A cut-apart sheet by Ellie Studio that has pink and turquoise and gray and red, so all different colors that I've already pulled out in my papers. Likewise, a lot of the different colors are shown here on this sticker sheet by My Mind's Eye from the collectible collection. And then this one has a slightly different take because you can see it gets away from kind of the warmer pink and turquoise combination and goes with a more a little bit more grown-up or masculine color, depending on what you use it for. But these are cut-apart pennants from Ormolu. So that has a lot of flat embellishment. I've also pulled out a yellow tape that's from Bella Boulevard because that would be flat, of course, and I've got lots of yellow paper there. But then I want to make sure I also have some embellishment that's not flat so that I have some things to give me variety. So I've chosen some chipboard pieces from My Mind's Eye, some feather tags from Jenny Bolin, and the flat back pins from Jenny Bolin in a really nice neutral cream and black set. Then I just have a last few finishing touches. I tend to add ink to my pages, so I chose 3 colors of ink, a gray, a pink, and a yellow. Those are all Mr. Huey's. I may not use them all, but by having just those 3 means I'm limiting myself and I'm not going to go back to my wider ink collection. I'm just going to stick with those 3 colors and I know that I'll be fine. And a journaling stamp. This is a set of 2 stamps, but I'm probably just going to use this one today, and that's from Jenny Bolin Studio. And then some little dots to finish it off because that's what I tend to add as a finishing touch. If you add other pieces as that last little element, then take whatever it is that you use, be that baker's twine or brads or anything like that. But I chose some pink pearls by Doodlebug and some black candy dots by Pebbles, which are very similar to the My Mind's Eye and Basic Gray enamel dots, except they have a matte finish instead of a shiny one. Okay, so that's everything I'm going to use, and I have lots of neutral there. I haven't chosen anything that's themed. I haven't chosen anything that's really obvious in what and how it has to be used. So that means that now I can go to my photos and figure out what will work. So I suggest, because you have 3 layouts, picking a 1, a 2, and a 3. So I have my photos chosen here. I have a 1, and I'm counting this as 1, but it is actually a collage of 4 images. So I just mean something that will take up the space of 1 photo on the page. If you don't use single photos on your layouts, that's absolutely fine, but consider something that maybe puts several images in one amount of space. That's my single photo. Then I have a double, 1 landscape and 1 portrait, which you know is going to be really challenging for me. It is not what I do naturally, but I really want these 2 photos together on the same page. They're both from Disneyland, and it's the White Rabbit's house and the statue of the White Rabbit. So I'm going to put those two together, but it is a more challenging design. And then I have 3 photos, and this time they are all in the same direction, that I'm going to use together. So I have a 1, a 2, and a 3, and I have my 3-page backgrounds. So my biggest decision now is which photos go with which background. So I'm just going to go to those 3 pattern papers that I chose right at the beginning that I know are going to be the backgrounds for my page, and make this one decision. This will be the biggest decision I make, and everything else will be really just simply adding and balancing from there. So here's my process. I take the 3 papers and I spread them out on the desk so that I can see all 3 patterns, and I take the 3 sets of photos, and when I have photos like this where there's different images, I'm just going to take one that has the most color in it so that I can see what I need to match. This one has more color here. Okay, so then I'm going to just place these against the different pattern papers, and I'm not deciding, is this the best pattern paper in my entire collection? I'm deciding which one of these 3 papers is best for each of these photos. That's it. I'm not allowing myself to consider anything else. So I could put the turquoise on the turquoise. I could put the vintage on the yellow if I really wanted to play up the yellow, and I could take pretty much anything against that black and white. But here's the thing, I really don't want to emphasize the yellow. These were all taken in low light. They do have Instagram filters, and I know that not everyone loves an Instagram filter, but sometimes that's real life. What I want to do is bring it to something that's not going to emphasize the yellow quite so much, and for me that's going to be putting it on the black and white pattern paper. So that gives me these 2 left to decide. Do I want the contrast of the yellow here and the similarity of the turquoise in the picture on the turquoise paper, or would I prefer it swapped around? Well, I actually like both photos on either paper. I think it could really work either way. So for me, I'm going to think of my full album. And I know that I'm using lots of turquoise in this particular album and not a lot of yellow. So I'm going to let that make the decision for me. I'm going to keep the turquoise themed photos on the turquoise paper. I'm going to bring this set over to the contrast of the yellow, and that decision's made. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to second guess and think, is there something else I might have better? And I'm going to start with the most photos and then work my way down to the single photo, because there's a specific way that I'll use the supplies for the last layout with the single photo. So I'll put these to the side and start on the page that has the 3 photographs. To get started, I just need something that's going to anchor my page design so that I can work from that. So I often will just take a 1-inch strip of pattern paper and align it to the side so that there's a little bit of the background left, and then I'll use that to line up my photos and start from there. Now, if your photos are all 3 images where you want the full image on display, then this is a really simple design, because you can take 3 4x6 and line them up, and you've seen me do it tons of times. This time I don't want everything on show. There are certain elements I want you to see, and then there's some background noise that I'd rather be covered up. So I'm going to do these on an angle, and I have a spot where I know I'm going to add some embellishment over the photo, because there's this corner part of the photo I'd rather not include. I want the pictures of everybody's nice, shiny, happy faces, and not the more behind the scenes elements, of which there's quite a lot going on. So the pictures couldn't be perfect because it was all very frantic and busy. Sometimes that's just what real life gives you when you turn on your camera. So I'm going to do them on an angle like this time, but same sort of design where I have all my photos in a line, and it gives me plenty of room for my title and journaling. Because I know this part of the photo is not what I want included, I'm going to go ahead and add some embellishment here straight away. So I'll start with all those different embellishments that I chose and see what might be best to fit this layout. We'll start with a strip of tape to just give me a place to build, and then these tape strip stickers also give me a nice horizontal element that I can layer on top. So I can just look for which pieces would be useful for the color scheme and the right size. So I want a piece that's a little bit larger than this one. Let's see if I can make this one work. And then I also want to bring in some dimension. So there are horizontal elements like the chipboard pieces, and I can layer those in here as well. And I can use pieces that have words where part of the words work and part aren't quite so perfect. So this one I just want to have the "so lucky" showing by the time I finish this little group of embellishments. So I'll just keep adding a few more pieces until all of that part is covered up. I also want a little bit more movement here, so something that's not a horizontal piece. So this feather will work, and I can just add a little black ink around the edge to make it match everything else. And I can also bring in some of these little buttons probably. So that way I'll have a variety of shapes, and my color scheme is starting to come out here because I basically am going to have turquoise with a few little shots of yellow, and that works really naturally from the supplies that I picked at the beginning, even before I chose the photos. So that can give you a little bit of confidence about using a limited range of your supplies at a time, because you will end up with things that work out just right, and that should give you a little hope in knowing that you don't have to go back and look through hundreds of pieces of paper to find exactly the right element. A lot of these things will happen as long as you just have a nice little grouping to start with, and that gives you somewhere to begin. Then I can just follow this smaller embellishment as a guideline to make a larger grouping on the opposite corner of the page. So I know that I can start with that washi tape and run a long line of it. I do want to add a little bit more room here, so I've cut some of the yellow paper to a box that I can just pop behind that little edge of the photo. And then I can look for other elements from the supplies I've already pulled out that are similar. So I have another strip from that paper, the sticker sheet. I have another piece from that chipboard set. I have another of the cut apart pieces from the same die cut sheet as the lucky piece, and I have that same feather but in another size. So I just have to follow that same guideline so that I have lots of things that are similar to what I've already used, and then I know that I don't have to go looking for something perfect, because everything is going to work out just perfect because it already exists on the page. So it's always going to look like it's meant to be there. So in creating this group, I'm actually way better off by staying to just the supplies that I've already taken out and put on my desk, because almost everything that you see here was also used here. The only things I've added in are a little bit more paper, but it fits the same color scheme as everything that's already included. And of course my title lettering, which is in a really neutral color that matches with everything else without taking your attention away from that. So that gives me place for a little bit of journaling here, or if I wanted to write more, I could use this whole space down to the title. So I'll fill in that, and then that's pretty much everything done. I do also have the option of coming back and maybe adding some little ink blots in gray, but I might just hold off because there's quite a few little pieces there already, and I think really all this needs now is my journaling. At this point, that's one layout done. I am going to come back and add some thread to these buttons because I like to have them all stitched down, but I'll save that until I'm finished with all three pages to add that little detail. And with my 3 photos done, that means I'm ready to move on to my 2 photo page, and that's my 1 landscape, 1 portrait in this case, and my yellow pattern paper from Jenny Boland's Modern Mercantile collection. I'm conscious that I pulled out lots of pattern paper and I haven't used a lot of it yet. On that first page, I really just used a tiny little bit. So on my second page, I'm going to use a standby design that I always find works pretty well. And that's to do two squares that are going to go in the middle of the pattern paper background. So I cut the diagonal, in this case, to 9 3/4, but it can also be 10, 10 and a half. Depends on how much, how big the repeating pattern is on the background and what you want to show. So I wanted it to frame nicely, and in this particular instance, to do this one 9 3/4 and then a 1/4 inch mat of the turquoise heart print all the way around gives me that nice balance to the yellow frame at the edge. So now I have a completely different look than my first layout, and I have lots of pattern going on, plenty of color, and I have my two photos. Well, I want something to be able to ground them, so I'm going to go back to that same pattern paper that I used to ground on the vertical, which is a little bit of a misnomer, but the idea that it gave me somewhere to work from, so I could take that as an anchoring line and place all the photos against it. In this case, I'm going to use it horizontally, but I want to have a nice noticeable line. So I'm going to trim this to 3 inches by 12 and run it all the way across the page. In this case, I'm not going to run it all the way across the page. I'm going to take 1/2 inch off. Let's see if that's enough. It might need to be a full inch. Let's see. Take just a little bit more off the edge. There we go. And that's going to keep my yellow frame all the way around, but it's going to give me a heavier horizontal element, which will help me balance my unbalanced photos where I have one that's vertical and one that's horizontal. Here's where that supply list at the beginning does create some creative challenges that I think are really important for you to come across and get the message through your head that you can work with what you've pulled out and not have to go back every single time. So I want to add a little bit of pink to mat this photo, but I don't have 12 by 12 pattern papers left that I haven't used. I've used all the 12 by 12 sheets now that I had pulled out, and I want this to be a different pattern than what I've used already, but my other pattern papers were 6 by 6. This is a 4 by 6 print, so it's not going to make a mat that's going to work that way. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to go ahead and mat it so that I just don't worry about the bottom edge, and I'll worry about that edge in a little bit. But for now, I just want to get the color around this picture because there's already that pink in this photo. I'll just cut the mat to even it out on one side. So now I have this mat and it doesn't quite work all the way around the photo, but I can worry about that and adding some sort of element there later. And with some patterns you would be able to even come around and put it on its side and cut another strip to work, but because this is a pattern that only reads in one direction, the little hearts are going to, and they're not going to line up the other way. That's okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and adhere it, and I'm going to do the two photos next to each other, but with that mat creating a little gap between the portrait and the landscape print. And I'm not going to mat the landscape image. I'm just using the pattern paper here to help line things up. Now I know I really want to work on this horizontal grounding here at the bottom because this is getting a little messy and it's kind of hard to see the defined edge. I can see the edge of the pattern paper just fine, but hard to tell where the photos end, and the top edges of them are nice and clean against a contrasting pattern paper. So I go to the different elements that I have that I've already pulled out. I'm not going to bring in anything new, so my tape is definitely one option. So I think what I might do is see if I can pop this underneath and give a little bit of contrast, and that's definitely going to work. So I can just place it and then hopefully get this in the right spot. And of course, now that you've seen me do this, you'll be far more clever and you'll put the tape down first. But I didn't, so there we go. Remember, I still have this unfinished mat at the bottom here of this photo. Well, I thought I'd bring in some of that same yellow pattern paper that I used on the first page, and I'll just cover up the very bottom of the picture, and then it won't be so obvious at all that there's part of that mat missing entirely. So now I have that little variety in the shapes at the bottom of the page. I've added my title in those neutral letters that I know will match everything I've pulled out, and I'm ready to bring in some journaling and some embellishment. But I decided I'd rather have another paper here to journal on or stamp the lines straight onto this striped paper so that I won't tend to angle everything due to the angle of the design there. So I'm going to use that other yellow pattern paper that I had in the 6x6. That's from the Lawn Fawn paper pack, and my journaling stamp from Jenny Bolin. I'm just going to stamp it on to the paper with black ink and cut out the box. And I can add more of these if my journaling doesn't fit in this amount of space. And then I'll be able to add my writing here and perhaps bring in a little bit more of this pattern paper up here in a block as well. So I can just use this one as a guideline and cut it to be a slightly larger shape. Now my journaling and my title are all in place, so I'm ready to add some embellishment. This time I am going to go ahead and use a bit of gray Mr. Huey to form just a little loose line of dots in the two corners of the page. And then time to bring in some other embellishments. And again, I'm not going back to anything other than what I've already picked out. So I went to this chipboard sheet that I'd already taken this from. There's a flower that could fit right nicely in that corner. And I have these two little banner pieces. Well, at first I thought they would make a cute little addition to the top corner of the photo, but I like things in threes rather than twos. So I had a look at the other elements that I already had out, and I had this large banner that works color-wise, but it's too big for this picture. So I'm just going to make it shorter. And then I can layer those three pieces together at the top edge of the photo. And if I didn't want to put something over the top of the photo, I could still use this piece and just use it on the corner or all the way up to the top of the page. Just look for a better placement if it didn't work well with whatever was in this picture. And then I can add the tiny little chipboard banner pieces so that I'll have three banner legs here instead of just two. And these little flowers here, and I've added scraps of the other two pattern papers that I'd already used on the page as well, so that I could get that little shot of more color, bring in all these patterns and just repeat them. But I wanted to make sure that I put the pink as far away from this pink mat as possible so that it doesn't look like the two colors are repeating so close together. Better to have a little bit of distance in between. Then I realized I had this butterfly sticker that I'd pulled out, which has the diagonal stripes much like this background, but in a different arrangement, but very similar colors. They're from two different collections, so they're not exactly the same, but I do quite like them together. So just add that here in this space next to the journaling. And then I have one piece that's absolutely perfect, and I love how this happens when you're not looking for specific things because you're not choosing the photos first. You can still find that you'll end up with embellishments that are absolutely right. So I have a layout about the white rabbit, and in my embellishments that I picked just because they were black and cream and nice and neutral and go with anything, I have a watch face. So that's absolutely spot on, and I can pop that down here with my title. for a little bit more embellishment there. And at this point, I'll call this one done at the moment, but because I'm doing 3 with the same supplies, I will come back and have one final look in case there's anything that strikes my eye that would make it even better. But at this point, I just always like to have this second layout, trying a design that I know works, like this 10-inch square on the 12-inch background. And that way I can just add in a few more pieces that I know exactly where things are going to go. I know I can put the title here at the bottom because I've got a horizontal line. I know I can put whatever photos I've chosen, even if they are both portrait, both landscape, both or one of each. And I know I'll end up with space for journaling and that I'll be able to emphasize this diagonal line. That means that I can use pretty much any supplies that I pick as long as I like the supplies together. So that makes it a really simple page to just get it done once I know I have the supplies that I like. That leads me to the third page with these supplies that we've picked for today. I leave this single photo layout last because I have a format that will work with the supplies I have left that works best, or easiest anyway, with just one photo or one block. It can be multiple photos, but just one element that you have to move across the page. So I'm going to set that with my background, and I'm going to take all the scraps that I have left. Now my goal here is not to use everything until it's all gone. That's a different type of challenge, and I enjoy that sort of challenge as well, but that's not what I'm trying to do here in order to get you past that idea of being paralyzed by too many options. Take just the leftovers that you haven't stuck on the other 2 layouts, and put them all on the page together so that you can see what you have. Then take away what you don't want to use. So I have the option here of red and pink, and I don't want to use them together. I want to pick one or the other. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out the pink and not use the pink patterns this time. I prefer to use the red. So that makes one decision made. I can put those to the side. I don't think that I'll keep this turquoise because it, again, is a pink pattern. Even though it's heart themed and these are anniversary photos, I think I can find other ways to get that meaning across. And that gives me this that I have left over. There's some yellow, 2 different yellow patterns, 2 different black and white patterns, plus the 12 by 12 black and white background, and a 6 by 6 of red. That will work perfectly for my paper, so I will get rid of the other pieces entirely and not even consider them for the rest of this page. I also want to add a little more color here because this is a very neutral paper and I have a lot of black and white pulled out. So I'm going to go ahead and use my mist first so that I can splash some yellow color around the paper. And that way I can set this aside while I cut all my paper to work. And I just want a little bit everywhere at the moment because I'm going to be adding quite a lot in the center of the page. And I want the yellow to be a bit of a background framing. So just lots of little drops for something quite subtle, really. So I'll set this aside to dry, and then I'm going to take all these different pieces that I have left and cut them into boxes that are even. So for example, this 6 by 6 could just stay as a whole square, or I could cut it into 2 rectangles or something like that. But this one definitely needs to be cut because I'm not going to use it as is where it has that corner chopped out of it. I'm going to cut it into 2 or 3 different pieces so that I'll be able to move it around the page. With everything cut into boxes, then I just start with the largest box that I have, or the widest box, and I start layering them onto the page so that they're just spread out and giving me some sort of kind of collaged background in the middle of the page. Really, really simple. Now, I'm going to spread those out, and then I had 3 that I didn't need to trim these down. This is just what I had left of the yellow. So I'm going to make sure that they are in separate spots across the page so that I end up with a bit of a visual triangle to pull that the yellow in 3 different spots, rather than put them really close together or put them all or put 2 on one side and 1 on the other. This just gives me a little bit more visual room so that your eye will focus on what's between those 3 yellow areas of the page. I've used my neutral letter stickers here below the photos, but I also want to bring in some colored lettering. So I'm going to use my stamps and a colored ink pad to bring in some yellow lettering that's going to be a lot more subtle than something like thickers. But I just want to have that little detail so that it won't be the most obvious thing that grabs your eye, but it will be legible on the page. From there, it's just a case of adding a few more embellishments from everything that I had sat out on the desk. So I used those pennants from the Ormolu cut apart sheet, which I hadn't used yet. I added another one of the Jenny Bolin flat back badges, and then it made each of these little groupings have something in common by the pennant plus a little bit of the washi tape and 3 black dots, but I ended up only using the black dots on 2 and just kind of mixing it around, but they all have a little bit of something in common between the shape and the tape. And then realizing that maybe I wanted a little bit more lovey-dovey themed, but I didn't want to go to the more the worded lovey-doveyness. I had these die cuts left that were in the options to do the you plus me equals love or that sort of thing. But I liked the idea of just going back and having something that was a little bit more symbolic. So I used some of the pattern paper and a heart punch. And there's my 3rd page all finished. So I challenge you to take one set of supplies, create this list create this pack, and I have a little checklist for you. You may want to really make some changes on the checklist based on your scrapbooking style. So just do that first before you start in with your pages. And then don't worry about trying to scrapbook until it's all gone. That's an additional challenge that you can take on sometime. But this time, try and work and see if you can make 3 layouts with supplies that you really like without going back to other things in your stash. See if you can get happy with the idea that what you've pulled out really will work. Then there's one important part of making this work long term so that you're not paralyzed by your supplies. And that's once you've done the 3 layouts or however many you decide to do, stop and have a look at them and really evaluate what you like and you don't like about those pages. Because if there's something that you really love about them, then you know that whatever you chose with those supplies, that really worked. If there's something that you really don't like about the way those pages came together, then you need to choose that element and figure out what it was that you didn't like. Was it really that there was another supply that you thought, oh, I could just go back and have a look through all my paper and find the most perfect paper? Or was it just that you wish it had more balance, or if it had more color, less color, anything like that? Because I think you'll find that the things that you really, the things that you love and don't love are less dependent on choosing that exact same perfect piece of paper than you might first think. So I really hope this exercise helps you get past that paralyzing block to your productivity, and I wish you much, much happy scrapping.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at twopeasinabucket.com.